Ayan. Live na tayo. Andyan pa ba kayo? Alam ko may update tayo kahapon na tungkol sa mga, alam mo na mga kameta, of course, pinag-usapan natin yung mga 500,000 strong grand rally ng unit team, di ba? Na yung pala, hindi pala 500,000, baka 5,000 lang. At of course, pinag-usapan din natin yung grand rallies naman ng kabila, no, nila LENI, na of course may mga counter meme din yung kabila, 'di ba? Kung respect my onion ay opinion pala, sorry. Yung kabila rin, meron silang pinost na parang may nakamali ata sa ano na pinost daw, ano daw 70 million. Tapos may nakita akong bago. Ang nakalagay naman sa unit team yata, billion na yata yung nakita ko mga memes. Hindi ko alam kung totoo yan, or fake yan, or talagang fake news yan, ano ba yan. Pero mukhang lumalaki at lumalaki, billion-billion na pinag-usapan. At grabe ang mga editing skills sa mga kaibigan natin. Medyo nag-level up. Or actually hindi, parang dumadami yung mga pero hindi gumaganda yung quality. So yon. Nako po. So pinag-usapan natin yung mga grand rallies at of course alam natin mahalaga yung mga grand rallies na yan, whether not so grand or medyo a little bit smaller than grand. Because it leaves a huge impression on the voters, it leaves a huge impression on politicians, yung mga fence-sitters, at of course today, meron tayong bagong update, no? So may bagong governor na naman na nag-endorse kay Vice President LENI Robredo. So LENI Robredo, interestingly, is picking up endorsements right and left, no? So the latest one is from Northern Samar, no? So Governor Edwin Ongchuan, yun, isa pa siya sa mga nagsusupport kay LENI Robredo dahil ang kanyang paniwala is LENI is compassionate and decisive. So pinag-usapan din natin si governors from Negros Occidental, from Bulacan, Eastern Samar, Northern Samar. So we're looking at different governors, from across the country, including some of them, allies of the president, endorsing LENI. At yung mga governors na yan ay alam natin na of course a lot of them, they're politicians. So of course titignan nila yung kanilang chances. They want to bet on a good side, hopefully on a winning side, para naman pag tapos ng election, they are on the good side of history, no? At para naman medyo magandang relationship nila with the new administration. So these politicians, they could be a bellwether of the momentum, what's going on the ground, because politicians are very astute people. Now, of course, not to prejudge some of the politicos at mga governors na in fairness, they're deciding based on political conviction siguro. Yun naman yung basis, not necessarily yung ganon, nasaan po ang where is the wind blowing, hindi necessarily ganon, di ba? So in fairness naman, so some of them of course look to be making their decisions based on political conviction. In fact, one of Duterte supporters said that the president has already made a virtual endorsement of LENI Robredo by talking about a preferably lawyer, compassionate person, etc., etc. Now, so we have this. We have major rallies coming out for LENI Robredo. We have many governors in swing states, kumbaga, endorsing LENI Robredo. And then, boom, meron tayong survey. So, first and foremost, ang survey po ay hindi na-cover ng March. Okay, so let's be very clear about it. Anong araw na po? Nasa second week na po tayo ng March. Actually, magta-third week na tayo ng March. So, hindi po ito ang cover. So, hindi po covered yung March, yung developments in the past 2 or 3 weeks ng survey ng Pulse Asia. Hanggang lang yan, di ba? Hindi pa nga umabot fully sa 4th week ng February yung survey. So of course, hindi pa na-capture ng survey yung latest developments. If ever man, meron shift in the tide, shift in terms of momentum in favor of one camp or the other. So the date is very important, no? So tingnan natin yung Pulse Asia survey, February 18 to 23. So, hindi covered yung first week ng March, hindi covered almost yung 4th week ng February, 2nd week ng March. At alam natin, pagdating sa mga grand rallies, including yung 500,000 daw na nagpakita dun sa unit team rally daw, hindi po ito kasama sa survey, di ba? So, ay survey na ito ay snapshot from 3 weeks ago, no? So, medyo hindi niya cover yung mga latest developments. So, let's be very clear, no? So, kasi narinig ko yung mga sinasabi ng iba, bakit ganun? Ang dami nagpapakita kay LENI, pero yung surveys parang pababa naman siya. Of course, one thing you have to keep in mind is the surveys do not capture yung mga latest developments. Pangalawa, of course, I mean, common sense, di ba? I mean, kahit gaano kalaki yung nagpakita dun sa mga rallies, it does not necessarily say something about the sentiment of the broader population. Kasi marami naman silent majority daw. And silent majority could swing in either way, di ba? But nonetheless, of course, when a lot of people show up, malaki yung mga rallies, malaki yung level of enthusiasm, it may say a thing or two about the election's trajectory at saka about the excitement that is generated by candidates. We saw that in the past, whether it's a progressive, fresh candidate like Obama in 2008 or whether it's a populist, demagogic candidate like Donald Trump in 2016. We saw that the interest and excitement they generated in the rallies online eventually translated, at least for Trump, in the first presidential elections 2016, into victory. Although, of course, in the second election, sabi ko, mataas pa rin yung interest kay Trump but not necessarily translate into more votes than boring Biden, no? So Biden did not necessarily do well in terms of Google Trends, perhaps, up until October at least of 2020. But he did well in the vote. So, as I say, medyo may ambivalence yung data dyan. Let's go through the surveys a bit. I know yung mga pro-Lenia hindi happy dyan. Of course, yung mga unit team ay masayang-masaya. Proud na sila, diba? So let's quickly go through it. But I want to also go to the Senate slate because mukhang Robin Padilla. Naku po, mukhang within the hindi lang striking distance, mukhang pasok na siya sa circle, no? If Robin Padilla keeps his current momentum, meron na tayong Senator Robin Padilla, no? Diyan sa at alam natin si Senator Robin Padilla. Kamusta po diyan? Ang aking ka-Baguio boy, no? Mukhang gusto niya talaga federalism. Mukhang very siya. Nakita ko tinatag-tag pa ako, nag-respond pa ako sa mga tag ng mga post ko sa issue ng federalism. Mukhang very passionate si Robin Padilla. So, kung maging senator yan, alam na natin yung magiging priorities niyan. So, let's quickly go through this. Kasi kahapon hindi ako nag-comment pa. Kasi sabi ko, hintayin ko muna. I have to go through the data. I have to confirm kung ano ba talaga yung data. Kasi marami naman natin nakita ng mga fake na edited na surveys na online. Of course, Pulse Asia is not the only survey agency. There are other survey agencies who can look at the other surveys na mas mabilis lumalabas, and some of them suggest that there is indeed some tightening of the race between LENI and Bongbong Marcos, no? But dito sa Pulse Asia covering February 18 to 23, parang lumakas pa yung momentum ni Bongbong Marcos. He's not only at majority, he's now at 60%. At ang lakas niya, pinakamalakas siya sa Mindanao, which again, my point is that yes, pagdating sa Mindanao, right? Pagdating sa Mindanao, a lot of this is Sara All effect, in my opinion. Because Bongbong didn't do very well in Mindanao in the previous elections or all of that. And the Marcos legacy is not the best in Mindanao for those people who bother to look at the war in Mindanao, etc. in 70s, 80s. So basa ko talaga dito is a lot of Sara All effect is going on here. No? Relatively mas mahina si Bongbong Marcos sa Visayas. LENI, is doing very, very poorly in Mindanao. 5%. So clearly nakita natin yung anti-LENI, anti-liberal sentiment is very, very strong in Mindanao. But she's doing relatively better na in NCR, in Balangs Luzon, and she does best in Visayas. So andun na malakas si LENI. Now, pansin nyo dun sa demographic, hindi nilagay yung A and B. A and B, ito yung mga medyo mayayaman, medyo social, medyo masarap ang buhay, medyo, alam mo na, so, medyo small yung kanilang percentage ng voters at ilan ba sa kanilang bumoboto ba? So, nilagay lang dito talaga C, which is like middle class or lower middle class, no? And then D and E, so urban masa, and then, of course, even rural poor, lahat kasama dyan. So I know some people made a big deal, but walang A and B. Pero ang A and B po ay napakaliit po bilang parte ng ating population and voters. At ito yung mga nasa Dasmariñas, sa Forbes, alam natin yung mga social na areas, ito yung mga nagyayat-yat, ito yung mga kahit anong mangyari sa Pilipinas, masaya ang buhay nila, pwede lang sila mag-New Zealand, mag-America, mag-Beverly Hills. Alam na natin dyan. Si Isko, so, if you look at Isko, he's also not improving much in Mindanao. And then, medyo bumaba siya sa Visayas kasi alam ko dati mas malakas siya sa Visayas. But he's actually a bit more steady sa NCR and Balangs Luzon, no? And then you have Senator Pacquiao, Senator Lacson, among others. Calyodi is still at 0.1%, if I'm not mistaken, similar to before. At mukhang may mas mataas pa sa kanya, no? Si Mang Dato, no? Si Faisal. Siguro may Mindanao strong base of support din. Naka 1% siya sa Mindanao. So, at least dito, base dito, mukhang hindi pa na-translate masyado into vote support yung growing exposure ni Calyodi, especially nakita natin yung SMNI debate among others. But again, this is February until third week of February, so hindi pa covered yung past 3 weeks. So let's be very clear about that. But it's the second preference part which makes this interesting. So dito makikita natin na Bongbong Marcos is already hitting a ceiling. So he's already now at 9% lang as second preference. So mga until 70% pwede pa siya. But he's reaching the ceiling, no? But dito ang lakas ni Isko. So Isko has still 26% to add. So he can go close to 40%. Pwede siya mag-40 if he does some good adjustments in the remaining weeks. So Isko can close the fight and come in. And alam natin na Isko has more overlap base sa alam ko with BBM's vote base than with LENI's vote base. So any peak in numbers of Isko is also good for LENI, right? Because it will tighten the race, right? He has 26 points to add, no? And in Mindanao, interestingly, his second preference at 30% almost. So that is why I think game plan talaga ni Isko is to get Tatay Digong's endorsement, because if you have Rodrigo Duterte's endorsement, it might convince a significant amount of Mindanaoans to shift in favor of Isko, and that could change the direction of the race. LENI and Pacquiao are virtually tied at number 2 with Senator Lacson at second preference. So medyo umakyat si LENI, but I think dahil bumaba rin siya as first preference. But so LENI has around 10 to 15% to add to her current numbers. So LENI can go up to 30 or more, right? Again, we're looking at these numbers. We have to look at these numbers to have a realistic understanding of the situation. At kay Isko, malakas siya as second preference, almost equally among all the major demographics. Pero with LENI, it's interestingly, she seems to have even most potential among E-class. So the poorest of poor Filipinos, the pinakamasa, a lot of them have LENI as their second preference, which is quite interesting. But also Isko is very strong at around almost 30% no, pagdating sa masa. So Isko still has a lot of hope to chip away dun sa advantage ni Bongbong, while Bongbong is almost hitting the ceiling na, no, dun sa maximum numbers. But he's already at a very high level, so at high equilibrium level of volatility, if ever meron tayo dyan. Now, let's go naman to vice presidential race. So Sara Duterte is more or less being comfortable at the majority level at 53%. Mindanao numbers niya, 82. Kita talaga natin dito, Mindanao is really pushing her up. Although she's relatively strong also in Visayas, I think that is understandable. There's the Cebu connection, there's the Danao connection. She has good relationship with a lot of politicians sa Visayas, so malakas talaga si Sara dyan sa Visayas also. So she's relatively weaker in Balance Luzon and NCR. At second place is Senate President Vicente Soto, sorry. Ayan na, pinaano ko na si Vico Soto. Pina-Senate President ko na agad si Mayor, bata-bata pa. So, Vicente Soto, ayan na. At 24 points, so bumaba siya compared to where he was a quarter of 2 ago. I think 2 quarters, when he was doing very well and he was number 1. But he's very strong in Balance Luzon relatively. The gap is quite close. Mindanao talaga siya mahina eh. 9 points lang siya. And then you have Senator Kiko Pangilinan at number 3 at 11 points. And he's relatively stronger in Visayas. So quite similar to LENI. Mukhang may pagka-overlapping areas of demographic strength nila. Although more or less even yung numbers niya among Class C, D, and E. No? Pagdating kay Senator Kiko Pangilinan. And then of course you have Willie Ong, who actually I think decreased yung numbers na bumaba. Willie Ong used to be I think around 13 points, if I'm not mistaken. So bumaba si Willie Ong. Does this have to do with the fact that, may isa, yung Isko and Sara? Is that a factor playing there? Perhaps. And then you have Lito Atienza at 1 point. You have Manny Lopez. You have Congressman Walden Bello. at 0.1%, at naka 1% siya sa pinakamasa, so E. So medyo may appeal, no? And then of course Carlos Serapio and Rizalito David, no? Now, let's go to the second preference. This is where things get interesting. Ang second preference numbers ni Vicente Soto is 31. So ang laki. Ang laki niyang pwede na dagdag. Lalo sa Mindanao, 40. So, pero medyo malabo na Mindanao will turn against Sara. So, parang mahirap na i-convert yun eh. But he has still a lot to catch up in Visayas, in Balanced Luzon, and NCR. So, kung dinagdag yan ni Soto, yung second preference, if he converted even half of it, he could be very competitive in this race. And then Kiko is at number 2 among the second preference folks. And I think he also has a lot of potential in Visayas to further increase his numbers and Balanced Luzon, but not much in NCR. So NCR mukhang medyo may wall dito against quote-unquote liberals, no? Now, let's go to Senate. Ayan na. So talagang malakas talaga. So hindi lang si Robin Padilla, but magkakaroon din tayo ng Idol Raffy Tulfo, no? Potentially. Idol talaga, no? Nakalagay dito. Oh, Idol Raffy Tulfo ay potentially magiging, well, very likely, I mean, at number 1 talaga rank niya. Medyo tumaas si Lauren Legarda. She's doing well. Wow. Mark Villar doing very, very well. Top 5 na siya ngayon. Cayetano, I think, was at number 2 or number 1 in some of the surveys. Now he's at number 4. Mig Zubiri doing very well. Top 5. And Escudero. So that's the competition at the top. And then you have Robin Padilla. You have Jojo Binay. So Jejomar Binay may chance na bumalik sa politika at the national level. And then you have Win Gatchalian doing quite well. You have Testaman, Joel Villanueva. And then you have Jingo Estrada. And Ejercito, okay, and Herbert Bautista. So Bistec, in fairness, they're doing well. So if you look at it, it's the progressive candidate here, left progressive candidate here, is really Risa Hontiveros na may chance within the circle, no, number 12 to 14. So yung mga kameta, whatever, yung mga opposition or liberals and all, don't forget na ang race dito ay Senate din, hindi lang presidential and vice presidential. And so far, it looks like Riza Hontiveros is the most competitive among them. Si Gringo Honasan, Gibo, Harry Roque are knocking at the door. Former Senator Trillanes is at number 17 to 20. And Elizor, Jokno, I think improved a bit at 21 to 24. But yun nga eh, we're looking at the voting share of only 12%, habang yung mga nasa magic 12 ay at already 30%. So doble ang kailangan gawin yan, no? Dapat doblein ni Chel yung numbers niya to be within the striking distance. And then may Larry Gadon ka pa dito. Ayan, nakapasok pa siya sa top 30. Alright. So yon, medyo ayan na. Then sa baba makikita mo si Secretary Silvestre Bello, Samira Gotok at in top 40. Okay. And then sa party list, makikita natin dito, mukhang pasok pa rin yung Ako Bicol, ACT-CIS, Senior Citizens, Malasakit at Bayanihan, Anwaray, Oswag Ilonggo, Gabriela. So some of the usual progressive groups are still within the striking distance. And then you have Anak Pawis, a teacher, Akbayan, some of the more progressive groups who may have a chance to still get one seat, no? Pero yung mga ibang minention ko kanina, assured na sila ng one seat. And we know, of course, what's the problem with the party list. Now, okay, so we just went through with some quick, rapid-fire overview, Tito Boy style, right? So yan, balikan natin. Kamusta naman kayo dyan? Kamusta na kayo dyan? Ayan na yung iba dyan. Yung mga iba, masyadong masaya. Yung iba naman, masyadong malungkot. Hindi pa tapos ang laban. Hanggang February 3rd week pa lang kinover nito. But, let me, okay, now, let's get real. Let's have real talk. I think the next 2 weeks will be extremely crucial and potentially this is the last window for the opposition and alternative candidates to close the window. So I think kung hindi nila magawa in the next 2 weeks, mukhang malabo na mangyari ito sa April if the current gap continues. So there is some variability in the numbers of the front runners, but it's an upward variability at high equilibrium level. So it's not very helpful. And in the case of LENI, her numbers went up from very low base in the first quarter since she registered her candidacy, but for some reason it's not having the jump that it needs in order to close the gap. And then Isko is still remaining as a very strong second preference candidate, but still struggling with making the necessary conversion to the first preference. So some significant narrative change, some significant tactical change may be necessary. But let me be very honest also about this. Ang basa ko talaga dito, and sinasabi ko matagal na, pwede niyong basahin yung mga sinulat ko, yung mga columns ko, yung sinulat ko na LENI 2.0. Marami akong sinulat over the years na mukhang ang karamihan ng mga Pilipino, no? Let's just be honest about it, do not feel invested in the post-Marcos EDSA regime. They do not feel invested in it because they don't feel it delivered on the fundamental promises of the People Power Revolution, because they feel that it has been co-opted by whatever you want to call them, whether it's oligarchs, dynasties, trapos, whatever you want to call them. President Duterte's election in 2016 was the first slap on the face of this regime, but it seems now people want to go all the way. I mean, a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people, significant amount of people, at least a large plurality, if not majority, are willing to take their chances with even going back to the past, right, through the son of the former dictator. No, that says a lot about the very low levels of investment that a lot of Filipinos feel in the current system and their willingness to take a chance. So what is the implication for LENI and for the opposition in this case? Well, the implication is very clear. You cannot have a compelling narrative or strategy if ang sasabihin mo lang dito is balik natin dun sa mga dating sitwasyon. No? I think a return to the past is not something what people are looking for. I'm talking about recent past, not 40 years ago, right? So we're looking at the more liberal reformist administrations we had in the past. That does not appeal. The kind of limited, calibrated liberal reform, hindi yan po ang nag-resonate sa taong bayan. People want significant, radical, progressive change. No? Some of them think that Bongbong Marcos, for some reason, can deliver that. But I think many would be also open to see if others can provide an alternative to both the deficiencies of President Duterte's populism, but also the deficiencies of the regime that replaced the Marcos dictatorship. No? Kasi kung titingnan mo si Pangulong Duterte, parang ang tawag dyan, to use the Roman term, is interregnum. No? So it's like a transition period between the old EDSA regime and something that is not yet there. So to use Gramsci, I mean, the old order is dying, but the new one is yet to be born. So I think this is a crucial time. Kaya nga, a part of me, I'll just be honest about it, and this could be quite controversial. A part of me was thinking, siguro naman, LENI should have had advisors or campaign people who actually are not the usual people who were involved in previous campaigns, because that old narrative, liberal narrative, is not really resonating beyond plurality. And in this case, it looks like not very large plurality. But that doesn't say much about the potential of LENI Robredo to be a much more all-encompassing, inclusive leader and kind of a harbinger of progressive radical change. LENI has to up the game. And for me, regardless of what happens in these elections, one big difference with 2016, of course, matters who wins, but the thing is this, regardless of who wins in these elections, ang big difference is that after 2016, when President Duterte won, parang hindi klaro sinong leader of opposition. Parang hindi klaro nasaan yung opposition. For a long time, parang may vacuum of leadership yung opposition. We won't have that, just in case the current trends stand. It looks like LENI has spawned a new movement. It looks like LENI is providing the kind of leadership that should have been there immediately in 2016. And I think that says something about the embers of democratic struggle in this country. But as I said, again, people are not invested in the post-EDSA regime. They want something else. And some of them are saying, ay, hindi ako natutuwa sa jowa ko ngayon, doon na ako sa ex ko kahit ano-ano, di ba? But of course, perhaps the way forward is to offer a third alternative, right, to the deficiency of the post-EDSA regime and also the dictatorship that it replaced, and what the dictatorship represents through, its remnants, no, throughout the decades. Alam na natin yan. All right? I hope you're getting the message here, because the message here is surveys are a snapshot. They don't tell you exactly what's going to happen 2 months from now. But they tell you something about the overall mood of the country, because we're not looking at just one service, we're looking at series of surveys. So if you have series of snapshots, then you don't only have a snapshot, you have a more dynamic picture. But again, things can change. And ang argument ko dito, the next 2 weeks is extremely crucial. The opposition will have to go all in and mobilize and get as many endorsements in swing states, among fence-sitters, among undecided, build a strong momentum so that it has a strong plurality going to this election, so that whatever happens, at least there's a strong opposition to talk about. Because we cannot talk about a real democracy if we don't have a robust opposition. As simple as that. Alright? I'll keep it there because baka naman sabihin ng iba, ay nako, mahirap na magsalita. Ang dami ko na nagsabi, tapos sasabihin ko mahirap na magsalita. Pero mahirap na talaga magsalita. Alright. Okay, gets you na? Okay, may question ba tayo before we close this discussion and balik tayo sa ating buhay and things that we do? Again, thank you